Who is the strangest person you've ever met? I grew up in a small town in rural Oregon called Millbrook, population maybe 1,500 on a good day. The nearest actual city was about an hour away, and between us and the next two small towns over, Ashford and Riverside, there was just 15 miles of highway cutting through farmland and forest. Everyone who lived in that area knew about Waving Dave. His real name was David Hutchinson, but nobody called him that. He was just Waving Dave, or WD if you were in a hurry. Every single day, rain or shine, summer heat or winter snow, Dave would walk that 15-mile stretch of highway between the three towns, and he would wave at every car that passed. Not a casual wave either, a full, enthusiastic, both arms over his head kind of wave, like he was greeting his best friend in the world. Sometimes he'd do this spinning motion with his whole body, arms out wide, grinning at the cars as they went by. He had this permanent smile on his face, this expression of pure joy that never seemed to fade. Dave was probably in his 50s when I was a kid in the late 90s, though it was hard to tell. Years of walking in the sun had weathered his face, and he had this wild gray hair that stuck out in every direction. He always wore the same type of outfit: jeans, a flannel shirt regardless of the temperature, and these heavy work boots that were usually covered in dust from the shoulder of the highway. The story everyone told about Dave went back to the 70s. His parents, Margaret and Robert Hutchinson, had owned a successful logging operation in the area. They weren't millionaires, but they had done well for themselves, owned property, had money saved up. When they died in a car accident in 1976, Dave inherited everything. He would have been in his early 20s then. According to the old-timers in town, Dave didn't know what to do with that kind of money. He'd been a quiet kid, didn't go to college, worked odd jobs around town. Suddenly, he had more cash than he'd ever imagined, and no real guidance on how to handle it. He went off the rails pretty quickly, moved to Portland for a while, and got deep into the drug scene there. People said it was mostly LSD and other psychedelics, but also cocaine and whatever else he could get his hands on. He burned through money like it was nothing, buying drugs for himself and anyone else who wanted them, living in a constant haze. It lasted maybe 3 or 4 years before the money ran out and Dave came back to Millbrook, but something had fundamentally broken in his brain. Whatever combination of drugs he'd done, however much he'd taken, it had left him in this permanent state of altered consciousness. He was friendly and harmless, but clearly not living in the same reality as everyone else. He couldn't hold down a job. He'd show up for a shift at the hardware store or the diner and would get distracted by patterns on the wall, or would start explaining to customers about the interconnectedness of all things. Employers would try to work with him out of sympathy, but it never lasted more than a few weeks. So Dave walked, every day, the full 15-mile loop between the three towns, waving at cars. That became his purpose, his job, his entire existence. He seemed genuinely happy doing it, like waving at strangers brought him profound joy that the rest of us couldn't quite understand. People would honk and wave back, kids would get excited when they spotted him on the side of the road, tourists passing through would be confused by this enthusiastic man waving at them from the highway shoulder. But for those of us who lived there, Waving Dave was just part of the landscape, as familiar as the gas station at the edge of town or the old water tower with faded paint. The town looked after him in small ways. The owner of the diner would give him free meals. People would leave bags of clothes on his doorstep. Someone made sure his property taxes got paid every year, though I never knew who. He lived in his parents' old house, which was slowly falling apart around him, but he had a roof and walls, and that was enough. I moved away for college in 2003 and didn't come back except for holidays. Every time I'd drive that highway stretch between towns, I'd see Dave out there waving, looking exactly the same as he always had, stuck in that permanent state of bliss. He died about 5 years ago, heart attack on the side of the highway, doing what he always did. Someone driving by found him and called it in. The whole area showed up for his funeral. Hundreds of people who'd spent decades waving back at a man whose brain had been fried by bad decisions in his youth, but who'd somehow found contentment anyway. There's a small memorial marker now on the highway where he used to walk most often. People still wave when they drive past it.